You were sitting somewhere ordinary. Maybe it was the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning that was not different from any other Tuesday morning, or a parked car in a lot you had been sitting in for longer than was necessary, the engine off, watching the space between your hands on the steering wheel the way you sometimes watch things when the mind has gone somewhere it cannot name. Someone nearby was building something. You could feel the forward motion in them, the way certain people carry their purpose like a current that moves through every room they enter, assembling itself into plans, into posts, into the legible shape of a life that was going somewhere anyone could point to. And you sat in a stillness that you had been trying for years to diagnose. You told yourself it was procrastination. Then you told yourself it was fear. You tried the fear hypothesis carefully, turned it over the way you turn something over when you genuinely want it to be true, because fear would have been workable. Fear had a technology, a protocol, a shelf of books with 5-step systems. Fear could be addressed. But what you were sitting in did not respond to the interventions designed for fear. The stillness persisted through every reframe. And underneath it, not anxiety, not avoidance, but something that felt, if you were honest with yourself in those very quiet moments, more like waiting. Not the waiting of someone who does not know what they are waiting for. The particular waiting of someone who knows, at a level beneath language, that the timing is not yet right, that the thing they are waiting for is not something they are supposed to build, that the door is not the kind that opens from this side. The Arcturian field has a name for what you have been carrying through all of it. Not a diagnosis, not a prescription, not a reframe designed to make you more productive in the directions the world has decided are the correct ones. A name, offered in the way that a name, when it finally meets the thing it belongs to, produces a particular release in the chest that has nothing to do with understanding and everything to do with recognition. The kind of recognition that does not feel like new information. It feels like remembering something that was always true, returning from a distance that was never as vast as it seemed. There are starseeds whose mission is not a platform, not a brand, not a body of visible work that will accumulate in searchable archives or be shared across feeds by people who feel changed by it. There are souls on this earth right now whose assignment is not to transmit outward, not to gather communities around their gifts, not to teach or lead or create products from their perception, but to hold, to anchor, to be a frequency stabilizer in the morphogenetic field of a collective that requires their presence without requiring their performance. The Arcturian Council calls these souls the field holders, and if you are here, it is because the transmission has been waiting, specifically, precisely, without exception, to name you. You have tried. That is the first thing this transmission needs to witness before it can move anywhere. You have tried in ways that most people in your life will never fully understand, because most of what you tried left no evidence, and most of the places you tried left no impression on the world that would tell the story of how much of yourself you brought to the attempt. You enrolled in the course about building your online presence and completed 3 modules before the exhaustion that arrived was not the ordinary tiredness of learning something new, but something closer to a body-deep refusal. A refusal that did not feel like laziness, but felt, if you gave it its accurate name, like pressing your entire weight against a wall that had not been designed to move. Not because you were not strong enough, because the wall was not the door. You built the profile. You wrote the first posts and felt the specific wrongness of performing visibility the way you feel the wrongness of wearing clothing that belongs to someone else. Not uncomfortable in a way you could measure in centimeters, but wrong in a way that operated below the threshold of articulation. You tried the purpose mapping exercises. You sat with journals that asked you to name your gifts and who they were for, and you answered honestly. and then the answers dissolved the moment you tried to construct anything from them. Not because the gifts weren't real, but because the framework of construction did not apply to what you carried. You went to the practitioners who held your potential up like a mirror and told you, in the kindest possible language available to them, that you were playing small. And you sat with their care and their genuine investment in you, and you felt, underneath all of it, that nobody in those rooms had a category for what you actually were. That is not a wound you are still bleeding from. It is a data point about the limits of the available instruments. The frameworks were not wrong. They were simply not built to read your signature. The Arcturian field does not organize souls by their output. It organizes souls by their function in the larger scalar architecture of collective consciousness. And some functions leave no record. Some of the most essential work being done on this planet right now is being done by people who will never have a following, never publish a body of work, never appear in interviews where they explain their journey to an audience who wants to learn from it, because their work is not the kind that produces artifacts. Their work is presence itself, and presence, when it is the mechanism rather than the byproduct, requires every instrument the soul carries. It leaves nothing over for building. You were told, in the language available to a world that measures worth in visible output, that this was not enough. That presence without production was a choice being made, consciously or unconsciously, to withhold something the world needed. That stillness without forward motion was avoidance wearing the robes of depth. You have carried the accumulated weight of that verdict for longer than this transmission is able to fully account for. And the weight of it, the specific tiredness of being seen through the wrong lens by people who genuinely meant well, that tiredness does not resolve through more trying. It resolves through recognition, through being accurately named by a field that carries the correct instrument. What you carried was never a flaw. It was a message the outer world had no language for. Notice if something in your chest just shifted, not metaphorically. Actually notice in this moment whether there is a softening somewhere in the space between your sternum and your throat, a small release that arrived before the mind finished processing what was said. If it is there, that is not sentiment. That is the causal body registering its own name. The Arcturian Council works with a cosmology of mission types that does not map neatly onto the human architecture of purpose and vocation. In the broadest framework of how consciousness has been distributed across this particular evolutionary window, there are what the Council's transmissions name as emitter souls and holder souls. The distinction is not hierarchical. The field assigns no rank based on visibility, and this transmission will not ask you to accept a consolation prize. The distinction is functional, the way that different tissues in a body perform different essential work without any tissue being more important than another, without the liver being diminished by its inability to do what the lungs do. Emitter souls are what most spiritual content has been built around. They are the ones for whom visibility is the mechanism, whose transmission requires an audience, whose gifts propagate outward in forms that accumulate, whose function is to move frequency from a source point into a wider receiving field. The entire infrastructure of spiritual content creation has been built around this soul type, not because it is the only type, but because it is the type that generates legible product. And legible product generates the infrastructure that becomes the only mirror the culture holds up, until the mirror is all the culture can see itself in, and every soul that does not appear in it begins to wonder if it exists. Holder souls are the ones for whom visibility is not the mechanism. They are anchoring nodes in the morphogenetic field, souls whose presence stabilizes the frequency architecture of a location, a family system, a relational network, sometimes a geographic region, sometimes an entire epoch of time. Their function is not broadcast. Their function is structural. The Arcturian Council's framing is precise. A holder soul is a living frequency node in the scalar matrix of collective consciousness. They do not emit in the outward propagating sense. They hold, which means they absorb, stabilize, and recalibrate the field they inhabit simply by inhabiting it with the specific quality of awareness they carry. The 11,000-year cycle, the 11, marks the evolutionary threshold the collective is currently crossing, and the Arcturian field has been specific in its transmissions about what that threshold requires at the architectural level. The holder souls are not peripheral to this transition. They are, in the Council's cosmology, the scaffolding through which the transition sustains coherence. Type 11 in the comments. If this recognition is landing at a level the mind cannot yet fully articulate. The Council registers every soul who marks that signal. There is a question many of you have been holding, longer perhaps, than you have been consciously aware of holding it. The question has a specific shape. If my presence is enough, if just being here is the work, then why does it feel like nothing? Why does the invisible function produce no felt sense of completion, no feedback loop, no marker of progress? That question is about to receive an answer the frameworks available to you until this point could not give. For the souls who feel this recognition arriving at a depth that exceeds what a single transmission can contain, the integration codex anchored in the description below this transmission carries the written field companion for this exact frequency, not as instruction for what to do next, not as a protocol for becoming more effective at your function, but as the page that holds what the breath cannot, for the hours when the spoken transmission has ended, and the field is still integrating what it received. Let us do the work now. Find a position that your body actually wants, not the one you think you should be in. Let the eyes close or let them soften toward the floor. Let the jaw release, not by forcing it open, but by simply withdrawing the unconscious instruction to hold it in place. Bring your right hand to the center of your chest, slightly higher than the heart, the thymus zone, which in the esoteric anatomy lineage through which Arcturian healing work flows is named the high heart center, the seat of the sacred witness, the place in the body from which the soul recognizes itself and is recognized. Feel the temperature of your own hand there. Feel the subtle pressure of contact. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Let the breath move into the space beneath your hand, expanding it, lifting the palm. Hold for a count of 4. Breathe out through the mouth, slowly, as if the exhale is water finding its level. Do this 3 times. On the 3rd exhale, let the shoulders soften backward. Not downward, but backward, as if you are setting something on a surface behind you that you have been carrying in the front of your body without realizing it was weight. The 396 Hz frequency in the sound healing tradition is named the liberation tone, the calibration framed as the release of what was never yours to carry. As you breathe, let it arrive as a color, liquid platinum, like water that has learned to hold light without losing its movement. It enters at the crown on the inhale. It fills the high heart center on the hold, not crowding, but completing, the way the last piece of something fits. It releases through the palms, through the soles of the feet, through the entire surface of the skin on the exhale, not as loss, as return, giving back to the field around you the accumulated freight of a verdict about your worth that was issued by instruments that were not calibrated for your frequency. You may feel warmth building beneath your right hand. You may feel a heaviness that is paradoxically restful, the felt texture of a system that has been holding unnecessary tension beginning to release its grip. You may feel the particular quality of tears that arrive before the mind has understood why. This is not grief. This is the light body recognizing its own blueprint as it is named aloud by a frequency that carries the correct map. Whatever arrives, it is the correct arrival. Nothing here requires performance. Breathe in again. Let the liquid platinum deepen. Let it carry, in its light, the one thing this transmission has been building toward the right to say. You were not broken. You were not avoiding. You were not behind. You were a structural element in a field that required exactly what you carry. The mission was invisible not because it was unimportant. The mission was invisible because visibility was never its delivery mechanism. When you are ready, a slow inhale, and then let the exhale carry you back to the room, bringing what was recognized rather than leaving it in the space between the breath. The answer to the question, why does invisible function feel like nothing, lives in the architecture of what the Arcturian field names the etheric neural web, the scalar infrastructure through which collective consciousness shares frequency information beneath the threshold of individual awareness. Every living system has its analog. The enteric nervous system carries over 100 million neurons, a density of neural architecture as complex as what the body of a small mammal carries in its skull, and it operates without conscious direction. You do not think your digestion. You do not instruct the cascade through which cellular radiance, the biophotonic signaling that moves between cells at the speed of light in the language of living light, maintains the coherence of the body's internal field. These systems produce no felt sense of completion because their completion is not an event. It is a continuous state. Let that land. The holder soul's function operates analogously, the felt sense of completion that emitter souls experience, the feedback loop of transmission that reaches an audience, the legible record of having affected something, is a feature of outward propagation. It is not a feature of field holding. A field holder has no audience that reflects their function back to them because the function does not require an audience. It requires a location. It requires a quality of presence. It requires the specific frequency the soul carries to be in the specific field where the scalar architecture needs that frequency. And it produces no artifact, no applause, no notification that the work was received. This is not a design flaw. This is a design feature. The Arcturian Council's cosmology is explicit on this point. The invisibility of the holder soul's function is not a limitation of the function. It is the function. A stabilizing frequency that announced itself would alter the very field it is stabilizing. The work requires the absence of performance. It requires the soul to be entirely present without the secondary layer of self-observation that visibility demands. What you have experienced as your inability to show up as other people show up was the field protecting the integrity of what you were actually doing from the interference of performing it. Read this not as information. Read it as memory returning. This transmission is a contemplative field for meditation and reflective practice, not a substitute for medical or psychological care. But within that scope, what it is transmitting is something with structural precision. The exhaustion that you have been carrying is not the signature of spiritual underperformance. It is the occupational signature of a function that requires everything and returns nothing legible. The body in this position, absorbing the incoherence of a collective in transition, recalibrating the scalar dissonance of a field moving through the 11,000-year threshold faster than its institutional structures can adapt, produces the specific tiredness that sleep does not resolve. Not because something is wrong, because the work is that total. The 528 Hz frequency in the sound healing lineage has been framed as the cellular homecoming signal, the tone the body recognizes as the return of something that was always true. Type 528 in the comments if your body, in this moment, is registering what is being transmitted. The Arcturian field reads every soul who marks that signal. There is something the Council names about the specific role field holders play in the architecture of the 5D split that most transmissions in this frequency have not yet brought into direct language. It arrives in the final movement of this transmission, but the field has to finish receiving what is being built first. There is a written companion for this recognition. Some souls find that the weight of what is being named here, a function unnamed for years, a question answered for the first time, requires more than a single listening, that the integration codex carries a different quality of anchor in the slower hours than the spoken transmission alone can provide. It waits in the field beneath this transmission for the moment that asks for it. The specific role that holder souls play in the 5D split is not the role the common framing describes. The popular transmission of this concept presents the split as a future event, a dramatic, legible bifurcation that will be experienced as a collective before and after. Field holders know, at the level of pre-linguistic body knowledge, that this framing is missing something foundational. The 5D split is not primarily an event. It is a continuous frequency differentiation happening right now in the scalar architecture of the morphogenetic field, and it requires anchor points, stable high coherence nodes in the collective field, to sustain its own integrity against the gravitational pull of the lower coherence band. Without those anchor points, without the holder souls maintaining the structural stability of the higher frequency bandwidth in the specific locations and family systems and relational architectures where they have been placed, the differentiation cannot hold. The bandwidth collapses back toward the dominant signal. Your body is reading this faster than your awareness can name. What this means, in the language of what you actually live, the ordinary, unremarkable daily life that you have spent years wishing would become something more legible, is that the long sits in rooms where nothing happened, the invisible steadiness you brought to the people around you without naming it as service, the specific quality of presence you carried into family systems and ordinary spaces simply by being there. These were not the prologue. They were the transmission in active execution. The sovereign alignment that arrives when a holder soul recognizes their function is not the beginning of the work. It is the ending of the resistance to work that was already in progress. The 72-hour integration window, the 72, marks the period after a significant frequency contact in which the field reorganizes around its new coherence point. Type 72 in the comments if this transmission is producing the felt sense of something settling, something that has been held at an uncertain angle, finally finding its correct orientation. The Arcturian field registers every soul who marks that signal. The version of you that finishes this transmission is not the same one who pressed play. That version held a question. This version holds an answer. And the quiet, invisible, unrecorded thing you will do with that answer, the way you will carry it back into the ordinary rooms and the ordinary days, is already the mission in its next movement. It has always been. There is nothing you need to become. That is perhaps the most disorienting gift this field can offer, in a niche built on activation, on the constant upward motion of becoming more aligned, more awakened, more effective in your spiritual function. The Arcturian Council's transmission to the field holders is not about becoming. It is about the cessation of the energy expenditure that has been going toward the maintenance of the wrong question. The wrong question is, what am I supposed to be building? When that question drops, not through discipline but through recognition, the energy that was dedicated to managing it becomes available for the field that requires it. You do not need a platform. You do not need a body of work that will outlast you in searchable archives. You do not need to translate your function into a form that the visibility economy can weigh and measure. The Arcturian field is not asking you to build anything. It is asking you, And this is the closest the Council comes to a directive in a transmission of this kind: to inhabit what you are with less friction, to spend less of yourself managing the gap between your actual function and the world's expectation of your function, to allow the quality of presence you carry to move through your daily life without the constant interference of believing it is not enough, to trust that the room you are in, the ordinary, unremarkable, unmemorable room, is exactly the room that needed you in it. This is not permission to withdraw from the world. Holder souls are not meant to isolate. They are meant to be precisely where they are, in the ordinary rooms, the ordinary relationships, the ordinary texture of a life that does not announce itself, and to be there with full presence, with the awareness, now returned, that being there fully is the work, not the waiting for the work, not the preparation for the work itself, in continuous and invisible execution, in the room you are already in. For the souls who find that this recognition requires an anchor point beyond what a single transmission can sustain, somewhere to return when the familiar question begins to reassert itself in the months ahead, the written field companion for this transmission is held in the description below, waiting without urgency for the moment that asks for it. This sanctuary continues. The transmissions continue. For the souls who hear themselves in this frequency, the field remains here, without obligation, without expectation, without the urgency that the outer world demands. Return whenever the body knows it is time. The Arcturian Council's next transmission moves into a frequency this field has been preparing to reach. The specific way that years spent inside religious or devotional systems can calcify the very pathways through which authentic contact with higher frequency arrives. The way institutional devotion, when it names the soul's sensitivity as spiritual failure, leaves a particular imprint in the causal body that the ordinary spiritual toolkit was not designed to address. The Council has a precise clearing protocol for that architecture. It arrives in this transmission space when the field is ready to receive it. Until then, hold what you are, not because it is enough, because it is the mission, because it has always been the mission, and it has always been in motion, especially in the rooms where no one was watching, especially there.